All right, what is this? How to illegally cross the U.S.-Mexico border.
Email before it's gone for 10% off at hover.com/Wendover. The United States, despite its geopolitical prominence, is flanked by but two countries. To the north, the 5,525-mile, 8,891-kilometer line separating it from Canada represents the longest border in the world. To the south, the 1,954-mile, 3,145-kilometer US-Mexico border is perhaps one of the most significant in the world. It separates two of the most economically and socially interlinked countries in the world. The US buys more from Mexico than any other country, Mexico buys more from the US than any other country, and Mexico sells more to the US than any other country. Beyond that, there are some 37 million people living in the US with Mexican ancestry, which is a truly staggering statistic. That means there are more Mexicans living in the US than there are people living in—
Hasan is a idiot, dude. He thinks he's edgy because he hates popular media like Star Wars, just like every other moron that agrees with his take. Listen, I love consuming, okay? So if you love consuming too, much respect to you. But my entire life revolved around not understanding why people appreciated popular news media, or not news media, popular media, and feeling like I had something, like I had a hole in my brain that would not let me enjoy things that other people were enjoying, and that there was something wrong with me. Like sports, for example. I literally thought that I was at fault for this. Like, I wanted to understand. I wanted to appreciate it. And now, luckily, I've been able to cultivate a community where I can just blur out these, just fucking yell out these takes into the void, and people listen, and some people literally agree with me. So it's great. I don't care if you like Star Wars. I'm happy for you. Okay? I just don't enjoy it, and I think the KOTOR timeline is like more entertaining and interesting than the original Star Wars shit, which is pretty basic.
In Canada, full stop. Both the US and Mexico rely hugely on this continuous flow of people and money back and forth, which means how well this border functions is directly tied to the success of both countries. Unfortunately for both, though, this border, while significant, has its issues. A border and its effectiveness involves far more than the line itself. It's about how well the overall immigration system between the two countries functions. But at the end of the day, that line is still quite important. The Mexico-US border is crossed more than any other restricted border in the world, meaning it's actually quite porous. There are 50 spots where one can legally cross the border by land. The smallest is the tiny Boquillas port of entry in Big Bend National Park, where about 11,000 annual travelers are processed remotely using video inspection kiosks, mostly to make day trips to the small Mexican town of Boquillas del Carmen while vacationing in the national park. On the other hand, the largest crossing is the San Isidro port of entry, processing 11 million pedestrians and 26 million cars per year, thereby making it the busiest land border checkpoint in the Western Hemisphere.
We need to make sure we silence this video. He's teaching how Mexicans can illegally cross the border, brother. We need to stop Wendover. Wendover, more like bend over to the Mexicans. Stop him! Delete this video, brother. What the are you doing?
As part of the primary route between San Diego and Tijuana, two cities between which people commute on a daily basis, this crossing is never not busy. The rest of this 1,954-mile, 3,145-kilometer line beyond those 50 checkpoints is secured, as to go from Mexico to the US or the US to Mexico, you have to go through immigration checkpoints, at least to do it legally. Each and every year, hundreds of thousands or millions of people attempt to cross into the US via the southern border without the legal right to do so. In short, they try to migrate illegally. Now, the vast majority of these undocumented immigrants are not successful in their endeavor. An estimated 55 to 85% of them are caught and
Hell
sent
yeah,
back to
they're
their home
not,
country.
because we got our wonderful border patrol, baby. Let's go. We need to give them nukes. We need to give our border patrol nukes. How dare they? How dare they try to cross our big, beautiful border wall? Build that wall.
But to many people, these odds are worth it. There is enormous economic disparity between the US, where average income is $65,000 per year, and Mexico, where that number stands at $9,500 per year. Also,
I
while
wonder
low
why.
compared to other wealthy countries, the US scores much better than Mexico on social mobility, meaning a poor person is more likely to become wealthier in their lifetime in the US than Mexico. In short, while there are certainly nearly infinite reasons why someone might choose to migrate to the US, including quite often family reunification.
Wait, what about? I don't get it. These liberal videos trying to make it seem like Mexicans are coming in because they want to pursue a better life for themselves because there's more financial opportunities for them. But it's not talking about how they're coming in to rape our children and also coming in to fucking turn this country into Mexico. That's why they wave the Mexican flag when they come over the border. Actually, Mexicans are coming in to make America Mexico. It's an invasion.
Unification or an escape from violence, research has shown that money and the attempt to escape poverty is typically the strongest and primary one. Of course, the question is, why don't these people migrate to the US legally? It would certainly be safer and cheaper. Well, overwhelmingly, the answer is because they can't. For some people, there is no legitimate route to legal status in the US, and to others, there's no practical way. Many forms of American immigrant visas have annual caps that are not proportional to immigration demand from a given country. That means that, for example, if you were a married Mexican citizen who was the son or daughter of a US citizen, the wait time to have your visa processed currently stands at 24 years. That means
Why don't they wait 24 years to legally migrate to America? You see that hammer? Folks, you see that hammer? That's a hammer he's going to use to do crimes. You see why they got aprons on? It's to fucking protect from the blood spill when they're doing crimes.
the wait time to have your visa processed.
They're smiling thinking about doing crimes.
They're currently only processing applications submitted up until August 1st, 1996. Faced with the prospect of waiting 24 years, more than a fourth of their life, until they can live and work in the same country as their parents, or, for example, take care of them in old age, many people seeking this and other classes of visas choose not to wait, and rather take the faster, yet riskier option of immigrating without authorization. While dangerous, the process of crossing the border illegally is a path generally not taken alone. Back 20 years ago, people had to figure out this process themselves, but nowadays, upwards of 95% of first-time crossers hire a smuggler to help them. That's an expensive proposition, with the average fee hovering around $3,500 per person, about 4 months' wages for the average Mexican. In exchange for their fees, these smugglers will generally group migrants together, transport them to the border, give them instructions on how to cross, and then arrange for transportation on the other side. The migrants and smugglers really have two choices in terms of which obstacle to face: the border security itself or nature. There is never no security, but in many places there is minimal, as hundreds of miles of empty, dry desert plains lay between the border and the nearest city where migrants can disappear into the crowd. This sheer isolation is a big reason why there is no physical man-made barrier on the border in almost all of Texas and across many other stretches in New Mexico, Arizona, and California.
It's because these are liberal libtard cities. They want Mexicans to come in. Libtard states like Texas. They're calling them Tejas out there, or North Mexico.
California. It's tough to get an exact figure as it's ever-changing and poorly recorded, but currently, only about a third of the border is secured with a barrier. In fact, the majority of that third takes the form of a vehicle barrier, intended only to stop a car or truck from driving across the border, rather than a full pedestrian barrier. Generally, there's only a pedestrian barrier in heavily populated areas like Brownsville, El Paso, Yuma, and San Diego. Even in these populated areas, one doesn't have to go far to find a gap in the wall. Starting from the western end of the border at the Pacific Ocean, the first wall-less section appears less than 15 miles or 23 kilometers to the east at the first section of steep terrain. Any barrier, though, doesn't tend to be too much of an issue for smugglers. Often, they'll
That's a Democrat-made wall, brother. You see that? Made in what? Made in Korea? That's why it's a penetrable wall. Unlike the wall Trump is building, made in America.
Though, doesn't tend to be too much of an issue for smugglers. Often, they'll have scouts on both sides, wait for Border Patrol to leave the area, then install a ladder and quickly climb over. Cartels have been known to go even a step further and build tunnels under the border. In January 2020, US Customs and Border Protection discovered the longest ever, a 4,300-foot, 1,300-meter structure stretching from Tijuana to San Diego.
It seems like if there's a will, there's a way. It seems like if you truly cared about stopping undocumented immigration, what you would instead do is eliminate any opportunities for their employment by imposing insanely harsh penalties on businesses that hire undocumented workers. But that would mean actually cutting off the economic engine of second-class citizens, undocumented immigrants, that are American industries, specifically agricultural production, for example, and even the service industry, would no longer be able to take advantage of the second-class citizens. That's at the heart of this problem. Okay? We have historically and always will continue to use undocumented immigrants as a cudgel against the documented American labor force. When there are 12 million undocumented immigrants living on U.S. soil right now, that's always 12 million that you could just be like, oh, you don't want to fucking work? The documented American labor force, you don't want to fucking work? Well, guess what? It doesn't matter. We don't need you. We have people who we could literally use for $5 an hour, less than the incredibly low minimum wage. Oh, you want to fucking unionize? Fuck off. Here's a group of people who have no power because we'll just literally deport them forcibly if they decide to demand back pay or stolen wages. Literally happened in the Purdue chicken factory, for example, for those of you who don't know. So that's why we have undocumented immigrants, when in fact it's virtually impossible to prevent unless you literally start killing people crossing the border all the time, nonstop, and not just allow the environment to kill them because of how terrible the journey is. We are going towards that reality currently, killing undocumented immigrants, or at least putting them inside of labor camps, or subjecting them to horrific conditions when they are caught, or when they are no longer useful to the businesses and are reported to the INS or ICE. However, there is a better way to do it. That better way to do it is allow undocumented immigrants to be documented immigrant workers and not treat them as second-class citizens. Allow them to unionize, because the larger piece of the puzzle is always being stolen by the bosses, no matter what. And the American labor force is forced to fight for the crumbs with the undocumented labor force. It's idiotic when the larger piece of the pie is always going to the tippy top. The smallest percentage of people are taking up the largest share of the profits. If there was only a way to fight back, well, there is a way to fight back. If you recognize that the undocumented workers that are coming over the border aren't coming here to like rape your daughters, or that they aren't coming here to fucking change America and turn America into Mexico, but instead they're coming here to pursue a better life, and they are going through horrific conditions. They're subjecting themselves to horrific conditions on the off chance that they might be able to make it, living with the fear every single day that they have the same kind of class interest that you do, and making sure that they have an easier path, and making sure that they have the documentation, and then turn around and create unions for them as well as yourself to implement to implement them into the American labor force, and turn around and advocate for workers' rights for all workers, no matter whether they're fucking brown, black, yellow, doesn't fucking matter what color they are, purple, doesn't matter. That would be a much better way.
4 months on this stream.
That would be a much better way
from a fellow boomer.
to advocate for the best interest of the American labor force across the board. We have enough wealth in this country to support a fuckload more immigrants coming in. The issue is that's not beneficial for corporations. I used to live 30 miles south of San Antonio, right next to a railroad that came directly from Mexico, and it was super common for immigrants to use the train to get across the border, and they would hop off and literally walk across my yard during the times when the train would stop. A man asked to fill up his cup with water once, so my mom had me make him a sandwich and let him fill his water. It was Pog. It was Pog you. Thank you, Hutch, for the raid, by the way. Your mom is a goddamn harlot, and she did something illegal.
His name is Hasan.
That's Tonio. Your mom did illegal crimes. Offering a Mexican water as he's in the process of committing a crime is illegal. Time to arrest your mom. Why were labor-oriented Democrats and people like Bernie Sanders against illegal immigration for decades? Because people like Bernie Sanders were against the people that wanted undocumented immigration to come into the country so that they could create the system that I'm fucking mentioning. I don't agree with Bernie Sanders' position on this at all. It's like saying, what's his face? It's like the age-old Tucker Carlson take on Cesar Chavez going out and beating the shit out of undocumented Mexican laborers on the border or some shit. Because undocumented immigrants is different than allowing all undocumented immigrants to be documented. Undocumented immigration actually causes a problem and can be used as a cudgel against the current pre-existing labor pool that is documented. My take is that we should document them, offer amnesty, and on top of that, have a safe and easy protocol for anyone who wants to come and work in this fucking country to be able to do so. Isn't the left take that our public systems we want to put in place wouldn't be able to handle the influx of people? I know anti-immigration leftists, yeah, they're fucking stupid because our public systems would benefit from documented labor being able to participate in society fully. They already pay into Social Security. They should be able to pay into everything else. These programs scale with more immigration. Okay? There is no anti-immigration leftist.
This facility was so advanced that it had ventilation, electricity, a rail system, and even an elevator.
If they enter into the U.S., it will make new problems that we don't want. Like what? Why? What? Like what? What is the... Why do you think a Mexican person is different than you? Like, you're such a fucking moron if you legitimately think that, like, a Mexican dude crossing the border to fucking... like to find more financial opportunities for themselves is like anywhere is like different than you, and their interests are different than yours. You're a fucking idiot. I'm sorry. You are completely fucking blinded by such hatred that you think like a Latino person crossing the border to fucking to find a better future for themselves, to make a better fucking reality and a better future for themselves is somehow different. It's so stupid. It's so fucking pathetic, dude. I'm sorry. You are a pathetic, racist moron, and you need to change your fucking stupid brain immediately. I don't think illegally coming and getting citizenship for being in the country is the best idea. Kind of like you said, just making the system a million times faster and easier would likely to stop illegal immigration in the first place. Yeah, that's my take. I'm saying make the system of legal immigration realistic and humane. We could 100% account for all of the undocumented immigrants working in our country currently, and we could absolutely fucking make sure that they have a legal process in place. When people say open the borders, they don't mean you can just like fucking walk in no matter what. They just mean there has to be a legal way of coming in and allowing people that want to work here to work here. In your social support system, is there a point where there's too much immigration overwhelming the school system? Why? More immigration means more need, means more people need to become teachers. That's a good thing. More demand. More immigration means more demand, means like there is no finite resource of jobs, okay? it grows when there's more immigrants. Social safety nets and social programs scale. And not only that, but also when there's more people here, there's more need for houses. There's more need for teachers. There's more needs for fucking roads. Someone has to build those. Wrong. Jobs grow when you put them in the ground and water them. Yeah.
Oh, you're such a
This
big
makes no sense,
man,
Law.
Hasan.
Explain why I poop butt. Hey, I'm enjoying the broadcast. You see on some young channel on YouTube, but you're young. You're awesome. Love the beer. Thank you, John Zuck. Yeah. The current way that we have our system designed is to create a class of indentured servants. Okay. The current way that we have our system designed with undocumented labor, knowing full well that we have fucking 10 to 12, maybe even 15 million undocumented workers in this country. Like, it's designed that way so that that group, that labor pool can always be a bargaining chip against the pre-existing American labor pool that already has documentation to be able to work.
Elevator. While it's unclear exactly who built and operated this tunnel, in the past, many of these have been linked to large crime syndicates like the Sinaloa cartel, demonstrating the unintended consequences that securing the border can have. Demand for hard drugs is fairly inelastic, meaning people who consume them are going to buy them no matter the cost. As it gets harder and harder for drugs and other controlled substances to be smuggled across, the cartels are still going to transport their product, but they're just going to use more advanced tactics. These tactics are going to be too costly or difficult for smaller smugglers, but the cartels, with their vast resources, will be able to build tunnels, use drones, or use other tactics, and with their smaller competition unable to transport goods, they're also going to be able to raise prices. Therefore, there's a possibility that making smuggling harder is helping the largest cartels make more money.
Especially because the drugs don't come over the border. They come, 94% of drugs that come into the country come through regular border checkpoints. Oh my fucking God. Holy shit. Please. It's like the easiest debunked talking point. And if these motherfuckers who love talking about how terrible and devastating illegal immigrants are to this country, if they actually knew what the facts were, they would never, ever, ever in a million years use that. Oh, if you, again, remember how I said if you want to fucking completely abolish undocumented immigration, what do? You actually implement harsh punitive measures against corporations, companies that use undocumented immigrants, no matter how big or small they are. That's the only effective way of completely stopping undocumented immigration. But they won't do that because that's the whole purpose of undocumented immigration to begin with. Just like if you really were fucking motivated to stop the cartels, then what you would do is legalize and or decriminalize depending on the classification of the drug. This is the most effective way to eradicate the black market supply for drugs. But you won't do that because, again, it's great because there is a basic fucking transfer of drugs to weapons. You keep Mexico destabilized with the fucking steady flow of weapons into Mexico, and you get cheap drugs from Mexico and keep the cartels alive.
A related effect happens with the human side of smuggling. Naturally, the sections of the border that are most secured are those that are easiest to cross, those near population centers, roads, and areas with less treacherous terrain. That means that, as the border is secured, that pushes migrants to more and more remote areas where the chances of injury or death is higher and higher. One of the more common places for migrants to now cross into the US is the Sonoran Desert. This area is incredibly desolate and harsh, with high temperatures in the summer rarely dipping below 100 degrees Fahrenheit or 38 degrees Celsius, and winter nighttime lows dipping below freezing. The most accessible section, next to a Mexican federal highway, has a pedestrian fence preventing crossing. As these data show, this is effective at pushing migrants further to the east. After getting dropped off near the border on the Mexican side, migrants will fairly immediately cross the border, which is usually one of the easiest components of their trips. The closest roads in the US to the border in this area are highways 85 and 86, but as there are so few roads here, these are major choke points where migrants could be caught. In addition, US Customs and Border Protection have internal checkpoints where they question drivers and potentially pull them aside for search to determine if anyone is undocumented or smuggling illegal substances. Therefore, at the very least, migrants need to walk 20 to 30 miles to Highway 86 in order to avoid the internal checkpoint. Many might go further, all the way to Interstate 8, with the end goal of making it to Phoenix or Tucson. As soon as a migrant gets to one of these spots, it is far easier to blend into the crowd, as both cities have large immigrant populations. From there, they'll be able to catch public transportation to their final destination. Many, however, don't make it that far, and not because they are caught by Border Patrol. This map, showed earlier, displays the site of every confirmed migrant death in Arizona. The true number, as these only represent those that are found, is likely devastatingly higher. Every year, many hundreds of individuals die on their journey to a better life. In response to the staggering death toll in this area, different groups have initiated efforts to help those that are dehydrated, hypothermic, or otherwise injured. The US Customs and Border Protection Agency itself built a system of alert beacons in this area that those in distress can activate. In response, agents are supposed to arrive and help the individual, but, of course, in the end, they will be deported if they lack legal status. Other non-governmental groups have also initiated efforts. One of the major causes of death is dehydration, with there being essentially no natural water sources in this area, so humanitarian groups have set up water stations at spots in the desert that migrants can use if they're in a dire.
Literally illegal, and ICE will, if they find them, dump the water, and they even pursued, what was the name of that fucking dude? They tried to throw, what's the name of that one guy? The famous case, they tried to throw that one guy in fucking jail for giving water and shelter to an undocumented immigrant.
I love the system. I can now remove the tinfoil hat.
The best way to kill the black market on emoticons is by decriminalizing cat jam.
Situation. Of course, both of these interventions are controversial. Humanitarian groups say that the beacons are tricking migrants into getting themselves arrested, since there's no clear indication that it's Border Patrol that will arrive and ultimately arrest them, rather than an ambulance or a humanitarian group. Well, the Border Patrol says that the water stations push migrants to further continue their dangerous journey, where they might perish due to another situation, such as hypothermia, therefore putting them at further risk. At the end of the day, though, both of these interventions deal with the downstream effect of illegal immigration rather than the actual source cause of it. True, complete physical border security can work somewhat. It certainly cannot stop illegal immigration, but it does curb it to an extent. But it is hugely expensive and almost certainly is not the easiest solution. The cause of illegal immigration is not that the border isn't secured, and it's not even that the countries that migrants come from are impoverished or dangerous. The cause of illegal immigration is that legal immigration is not an option. Nobody wants to risk their life just to move to a new country and live in fear of deportation for the rest of their life. When Americans want to move to Canada, for example, they don't sneak across the border. They don't live undocumented for the rest of their life, restraining themselves to only certain low-paid jobs. They take the easier route, the legal route, because they can. If they are denied, it is generally due to certain qualifications they lack, so they go off and gain those qualifications. Many people in Mexico, Central America, and other less wealthy areas, meanwhile, simply don't even have an option of migrating to the US legally. There is no reasonable legal path like Americans have for Canada. Canada, a country whose immigration system is certainly not perfect, has essentially halted illegal immigration despite bordering a country home to tens of millions of undocumented migrants. They certainly don't let everyone who wants to live there indefinitely do so, but they at least have a reasonable, feasible path to legal status for anyone, no matter their country of origin or economic situation. When they can go through the safe, legal route, there's no good reason for people.
I just want to point something out because someone asked, like,
Oh, you're such a
what's
big
up with
man,
like a border
Hassan.
wall? Should we destroy the border wall? The reason why I think a lot of leftists criticize the border wall is because it's just a symbol for racism. Like it's a way for Americans to rally behind a cause is just a way for like racist Americans to rally behind a cause and like associate it with like a tangible policy position. Overall, a border wall is not going to stop undocumented immigration. Okay? That's like literally this entire video is about how a border wall is not going to stop undocumented immigration. It's just pointless. It's a symbol. It makes money. I mean, it doesn't make money. Sorry. It costs money, but overall, it's just like a fucking pointless waste of money. Totally open borders, a Koch brothers ANCAP wet dream. No one wants that. Like, that's not a real thing. That, like, unless you think like there's someone out there who's like, let's fucking allow everyone to just like go over any border in the way they want to. When people say open borders, what they actually mean, it's like prison abolition. What they actually mean is, no, there should be a fucking legal way that anyone who wants to come here, unless there's like really extreme circumstances, should be able to come here. We have enough wealth in this country, and we have enough prosperity in this country for everyone.
Man, Hasan.
Hi.
Okay? As long as we humanize our immigration process, and as long as we allow amnesty for people that are here,
This is a
we could
deranged
literally have
pervert.
a larger labor force that is able to fight alongside the pre-existing labor force to increase wages for all. We already cannot support the lower class with our current system as is, since the system is shit. So how do we magically start creating jobs to supply to meet the demands of immigrants?
Whores in this house.
We
There's some
can't
whores in this
support
house.
the
There's
lower
whores in this
class
Take
with
my
our
wage
system
plus
as
money, you
is
devil.
because of the way that the fucking class dynamic exists under capitalism. What the fuck are you talking about? What, you think
His
when we
name
shut
is
off our borders
Hasan.
completely in its
Throw up
entirety,
again,
that's
gang.
going to magically eradicate? What are you, crazy? What the fuck? Why do leftists like throw around the, or like, I don't know, people that are kind of interested in leftist politics, like throw around the word class without any sort of like additional association with what that means? Don't say fucking stunlock. This is an important subject that I talk about all the time. There is nothing. And I mean, like, the reason why we don't have public safety nets or social safety nets or public programs is because of undocumented immigrants. Is that what you think?
This is a
No,
deranged
that's not the reason.
pervert.
That's not the fucking reason why we don't have social safety nets. We don't have social safety nets because it's not beneficial for the wealthy upper crust of society to pay for them. They want to maintain their hegemonic power. They want to maintain their positions of power. They want to maintain the current distribution of profits. And if we had more social safety nets, those social safety nets would have to be paid for. And they would be paid for by the profits that are currently being distributed mostly to the fucking top. It has nothing to do with undocumented immigration coming into this country or not.
People to migrate illegally. Building physical systems to stop illegal immigration might make sense if it were a physical problem, but it's not. People don't cross the border outside official channels because it's physically possible. That's a pull factor, but illegal immigration is caused by push factors. It's a social problem, so to solve it and cut it down, you need social systems, such as a real immigration system that gives opportunities to all, not just those that are lucky. Your virtual identity is more important.
Just saying it's unreasonable to bring more people into the US right now since you guys cannot deal with your own people. No, it's not fucking unreasonable. It's completely unrelated. What you are talking about as far as like bringing more people in the country is completely unrelated. This is why I unironically took issue with the latest Chapo like book read about what Matt Iglesias was saying. While Matt Iglesias is a relentless, annoying neoliberal, and ultimately he was trying to say like we should have 1 billion Americans and it's American exceptionalist garbage, the excerpt at least that they took a look at. I don't agree. I don't disagree with the heart of what Matt Iglesias' argument is that we could have an absolutely sustainable economy even with 1 billion fucking people in this country. Okay? And we could. He's not wrong about that take. Neoliberals are not wrong when they talk about immigration. It's just dependent on how it's done. Yeah, the only bad part about that would be climate, which is a huge and which is a huge problem for sure. If we had 1 billion Americans, oh my God, the world would explode in like a year. Our energy consumption is already fucking off the charts. That's true. The people are saying like 1 billion Americans, we would destroy this planet in like a year.